replicating what the master can do. It's never about replicating what the master can do. It's about the apprentice having the courage to give it a try.
Some masters might want you to repeat and do exactly what they do, though.
Well,
That's the problem.
Then we had a great conversation about the oppressive systems in education and the expectation that any person walking in the front door should be a clone of the top dog in the school. And that's a bad way for the system to be, because it basically says, and that's not so bad if you have a really diverse leadership team and it's representative and it's equitable, and you have individuals of different intellectual and cultural and spiritual sort of like intersectionality. But if there's just a white dude, and there's only ever been an old white dude in that chair, then the expectation of them being the most, the pinnacle, that's problematic. So, working with the teacher candidate that in a lot of ways has only been trained to follow the system and not really look at the system or decode the system or debunk the system, have that yeah, but moment. Like, I get it, but I don't think this is actually, it's a funny thing. So I'll finish that sentence, but I want to finish it a different way. I think often, like, we've gotten really comfortable, I think as educators, I think we're pretty comfortable. There's always this idea that we're okay with taking positive risk on behalf of the students. I think that's kind of like a foundational kind of belief system in teaching. We're good. Like, you're gonna step up. You're gonna defend that kid. You're gonna get them a laptop and make sure maybe they have Crayolas and some scribble paper for the break. You're gonna support maybe with lunch. Like, we're gonna do these things. We're gonna take the risk to make sure that the kids have the stuff that kind of falls just on the gray zones of education, just in the gray zones. I always like to have the conversation is, how do we reflect that backwards on ourselves and make sure that we're taking positive risk for ourselves as well, and sort of speak up, step in, lean in, whatever you want to call it, and push back when we know that our needs are not being met. And that's a tricky space, because teachers, they will express their needs. Many express their needs on socials, tons. You can find tons of teachers that are, providing that kind of commentary about the social fabric of education. I always wonder how much of that is actually translating to the classroom and to our own local school systems and systems of power to be able to push back and say, here's the challenging kind of dissonance. This is great for kids. This is bad for teachers. So this is great for the kids as humans, but this is bad for the teachers as humans. So, just back to that measurement of who I get, on one hand, I'm not about to invest, or I guess divest, I don't know what the word is, divest all of the power and put it into the principal's chair. I think, though, one of the truths are that there's the perception that they are the lead learner, lead teacher, top dog in a school. And in many ways, that perception is fed by the education system, the sort of the almost, in some ways, sort of militaristic stacking that there has to be a general and there has to be the soldiers, right? And I think that kind of a conversation, not so specifically the military style, but I think that kind of conversation for teacher candidates is a great conversation to have, because it puts whatever lens we easily use, whether it's you use a lens of housing scarcity, or a lens of socioeconomic stability, or an equity lens, whatever lens we're willing to do to sort of see the better, bigger picture of the kids in front of us, I like the idea of flipping those lenses and looking at the system, pushing back. And the system, I get, is people. I get that. In sort of lensing the system, we're also lensing individuals that are sort of developing and working this. We're lensing ourselves because we are the education system. It's not some Skynet kind of a creation. It is individuals that are sort of making decisions, using the tools, developing protocols and procedures. Like there's humans that are sort of making this happen. But just, I guess, the last thing I'll drop into this is that the teacher candidate that had been working with me, we made sure that we spent time in those spaces. Because I will say that, I think probably because I'm white and I'm a dude, and I didn't necessarily have a sense of, but I benefited from colonial power. When I walked in and started teaching, I wasn't thinking about the systems. I actually walked in and thought to myself, damn, this was pretty easy to get a job. No joke. I thought that to myself, this was super simple. And I even went so far as to say that to people. Yeah, I stopped cooking and right away started working. I guess it was a good time for tech teachers. Now I know that was total BS. Is that the system had its doors open to me. It wasn't, it was sort of like the system knew they were looking for a guy like me, not someone, they weren't looking for a teacher. They were actually looking for a guy like me. And that was some of the powers within education. So talking about those systems and having someone be aware of what's happening, the ones and zeros that are clicking on and off in the system, that we spent a lot of time talking about that. And that's, I don't know if that's what other teacher candidates talk with their associate teacher. The student that I worked with said, I've talked to a couple people and they're not having these conversations. Like, okay, so from their measurement, these types of conversations are not happening. But yeah, I grew from it. I'm looking forward to the next opportunity to provide mentorship or being a associate teachership, whatever the title I'm gifted, I'll run with it. So that was a lot. I blathered.
It's okay. Sometimes we need to blather.
Blather, yeah.
You dropped way too many nuggets in there. And I'm just going to sit on a couple of them. One of which is this business of, I don't believe some principals in the system are thinking at the systems level. I know that they're privy to it because that's where they sit. That's where they sit in the layers of education. But I don't believe some of them think twice about those layers. The other thing is that from my experience watching my colleagues work with student teachers, what do you call them? Teacher candidates. They don't go deep like that. And the fact that you were able to look at big picture items in education, to look at the system from the outside in, so to speak, you even captured all that in a reflective practice with your teacher candidate by creating the podcast episodes where after school you talk to her about her day and her questions and her wonders, and then provide her with an opportunity to ask you questions about her thinking and her reflections. I don't see a lot of that happening. Now, I'm not in everybody's classroom, but I just don't feel like it's happening. I feel like teacher candidates come in and it's all the minutia of the true teacher work that we were hired to do, but is only like 15% of what we actually do, because there's so many other things going on, especially with COVID. It's muddied the waters a bit. Everything's really kind of different. And there are still some people who are not acknowledging the different. They're like, yeah, there's a pandemic, but you're going to do everything that you normally did pre-COVID. And then it's like, some people won't push back. Some people push back and say, well, I don't understand how you'd like me to do some pre-COVID stuff with my students when they're all wearing masks and we're not supposed to be close together. So I don't understand. And, my wife and I were talking about this. We're talking about, she'll tell me something's happening at her school and I'll be like, well, that's not happening at my school. And we'll look at like the guidelines, what the guidelines say, and then we look at the deviations from the guidelines. And she'll tell me, well, this happened the other day and this is how we're responding. And I'm like, same thing happened in my school. We're not responding that way at all. And so to pretend that everything is happening the same at every school is just wrong. And hey, you know what? We talked to my youngest who's in elementary school. So there's three of us and we're all talking about the same situation and three different ways it's being dealt with. And that's during a pandemic. So I look at this upside downness of everything. And I look at what are some of the factors that are creeping in that nobody's talking about. Teacher fatigue, the whole equity lens, looking at things from an equity perspective is also throwing people for a loop. People who want equality but don't understand equity. Like what I'm providing you with are examples from my classroom, my 22 grade 3s and myself and 2 educational assistants. And I can tell you that there's deviation, there is confusion, there is leadership, but not everybody appreciates it. So for example, I had a really good conversation with both of my EAs yesterday. And it's even calling them my EAs. This is for you, Carlos. It's so colonial. The educational assistants that work in my classroom community, it's also their classroom community. We're talking about making decisions. And it was an interesting conversation because, they were saying that maybe they would do things differently than me. And I said, that's awesome that you come at it from a different way. This is how I'm doing this. And this is why. I don't need to explain my why, but I do because I want to show them there is some thinking behind what I'm doing. And, that's not always going to happen, right? When my principals make decisions, sometimes I'm ballsy enough to ask them why. I'll just say, why'd you make that decision? And I'd like them to think that I'm coming at it from a place of wonder, not a place of elitist. Like I think I know better. It's why'd you make that decision? And in fact, this happened the other day when we found out, when the ministry told us at the 11th hour that, hey, make sure you're fully prepared to go online after the Christmas break, because we may do that. So prepare. And what that looks like in a school is chaos. The principal then instructs the staff on what needs to happen, then the staff literally make it happen. So when I was told what needed to happen, I was with the Girls Who Game Club. So I wasn't with my kids. And the first thing I thought was, okay, after my recess duty and I'm back with my kids, there will be no instruction for the last chunk of the day. There will be no instruction. There will be no pedagogy. It will be me trying to put out a fire that was started by somebody else. It will be me who's going to do everything I can to be able to say to my principal at the end of the day, you told me what I needed to get done and I got it done. And don't ask me how, but it's done. All that, when it goes through the mind of a new teacher, is different, I believe, than the mind of an experienced teacher. So as I'm in my room and I'm telling my kids, pack this, put that away, do this and do that, like a general telling his troops what to do and how to do it, one of the new teachers came to my door. Mr. C, somebody's at the door. I turn around. It's one of the brand new teachers. She's got maybe a year and a half of experience, but she's new. She says to me, Roland, can I ask you a question? I'm like, yeah, sure. She goes, are you sending this home? Are you sending that home? And I was like, I looked at her and I was like, yeah, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. She goes, okay, well, I'm not sure. And then the newness came out. The rookie came out. I don't understand enough about how this would work to be able to go back and tell my kids this or that. So I was happy at that moment in time to say to this person, these are the decisions I've made. These are why I've made these decisions. And it was all under fire. It was like there was no time. There was no time to give in-depth explanations. It was, this is what I've done. This is why I've done it. Now I need to get back to doing it. She's like, okay, thanks. And she took off back to her room to continue doing. She then made a decision. In the heat of the moment, she had to make a decision. She had her own thinking. She came to me for advice. Then I gave her some and she left. So I'm guessing that with her thinking and my advice, she came to some kind of conclusion and moved in a particular direction and was able to do so with some level of confidence. These are things that have never really happened before, but they're happening now. And I know, like, my educational assistants, they said, well, I would have done it like this. And I'm like, awesome, thank you. I will take that. I will bank it. But I'm not going to walk around regretting the decisions I made. I made the decisions that I had to make at the time with the knowledge I had and the instructions that were given to me by my superior. So this is the next thing I want to say about this. I want to go back to your military reference. It's funny you say that we need to have a general and some captains and we need to have that structure of command. But what I thought about right away is Navy SEALs, special operations, they have that structure, but they don't let it get in the way of their job. They are allowed, the lower ranking soldiers in special operations, and I know this just from reading and watching things and hearing former special operations officers and soldiers talk about their experience. My understanding, what I've inferred from what they've said is when you get to that specialized level, you're allowed to make decisions on the fly to get to the ultimate goal. So you're not checking in with your captain every 5 minutes saying, uh-oh, this is happening now. What do I do? My understanding is those specialized operational groups, they take real life data that's coming at them and they're making decisions and they're allowed to take leadership of situations. And I felt like in that moment in time, based on my experience, based on my relationship with my administrators, based on my age and where I'm at in my life, I was making decisions that a lot of people may not have agreed with, but it didn't matter to me because what I had to do was meet a goal within a certain time limit, and it had to happen. And then when it was all done, the bell rings, all the kids go. I look around the room, and the room is exactly the way I was instructed to have it. And the kids have left with the things that they were supposed to go home with. I'm like, mission accomplished. I can reflect on this later. Then the next day, it was funny. The next day, because we had to do all this on a Thursday, but we still had to come to school on Friday. So Friday morning, I'm talking to some of my colleagues, and it was a debrief of what had happened the day before. They're like, oh man, in the heat of the moment, I didn't do this and I didn't do that. What did you do? I told them what I did. They said, well, how are you going to ensure that the kids bring some of those things back today? I said, well, I told them this was a test. I told them this was like a fire drill. And we called it a COVID drill. I said, this is a COVID drill. You're going to take all these things home and you're going to bring them back tomorrow because this is a drill so that you're ready to do it when it's real. And they're looking at me, they're like, oh my God, that's genius. I'm like, it has nothing to do with genius. It has to do with experience of understanding how my audience works, how I could get them motivated to do what I needed them to do, and how to not frighten them at the same time. And so I said, it says it's just experience. So I said to them, we'll find out today. Today will be your true test. Were your kids able to function in a way that you need them to? And will they return today knowing what to do today based on what you did yesterday? And they were really worried. And I said, I'm worried too, because my audience are a bunch of 8-year-olds. So I don't
Yeah.
know. And then what happened was, it was pretty cool. couple of kids didn't come to school. Only 2 kids didn't bring back the stuff that they were supposed to bring back. So then it was manageable to deal with. But it was a great lesson because I told those kids, I'm like, how do you feel about your performance? They're like, I failed. Well, how did you fail? Well, you told me to take all this stuff. You said it had to come back tomorrow. It was a COVID test. I didn't pass the test. I said, awesome. So I said to them, I appreciate your assessment. I never told them they failed. I wanted them to tell me that they thought they failed. I said, based on your evaluation, I said, now you know what to do. Now you know how important it is that the next time something like this happens, you're on. You're going to remember this time that you feel that you failed, and you're going to step it up. Then they were all like glowing, feeling good, right? Like my teacher didn't hammer me. And I'm like, you hammered yourself. Anyway, so I know we that took a long time to get to where we wanted to be, but you and I started talking about mentorship. And there are so many things happening right now in education. Like job action was a year ago. We were in job action. We were striking. And all that's gone now. Like it's like it never happened because COVID took over. And COVID continues to take over. And it's like I'm more comfortable now than I was before with my work situation, right? I now have a groove. I've gotten into a groove of how I operate at work, what I do to feed myself, what I do to feed my kids, and the rest can just go away. The rest is just it's not a factor for me anymore. I've succumbed to I've ha- I've succumbed to the change. I've changed, I've shifted. And with that shift, there's a lot of loss. There's a lot of good things I used to do pre-COVID that I'm not doing now. But what I am doing now, my wins, is that I'm surviving. I still go to work every day. I'm still building relationship with my students. I'm still teaching curriculum, albeit not how I would like it to be done, but it's happening. So nobody can say to me, you're not doing your job. I am doing my job. It looks different because we're in the middle of a pandemic. And if you don't like that, then you can take over. You can take over. And I don't say that. I don't say that in the typical Roland, take a hike fashion. I say that as if you can take over and you can show me how to improve my practice, I'm all in. But if you're just going to stand on the sidelines and chirp at me, you're not getting my time. And now I'm going to say something about principals, and this is not against my administrators, but I saw a wicked tweet the other day, and I did one of these when I read the tweet. And for anybody who's not watching, for Shref who's listening, I'm clapping Shref. I did one of these because the tweet said, I'd like my administrators to come into my classroom and teach in here for a week and then tell me how to teach. Because all our administrators now are, they're all pre-COVID administrators, but they're telling us what to do and how to do it. Why don't you come in here and take over my class for a week and then let me know if you're still going to be bothering me about certain things that you say I need to get to you ASAP. Now, I'm saying it again. My administrators are not doing that to me. But there are some administrators that are doing that to people. And this tweet was just right on. Get your rear end in here and do this again. And let's see if you remember how to do it. Because now it looks different than when you did it. 100 times different. Even all the things they told us to do, all the high yield strategies and stuff that involve collaboration and coming together, we're not doing it. Yesterday, I had a fire hose and I was putting out fires in my classroom because the kids were engaged in something fun and they wanted to do it with other people. And I was like, what are you doing out of your desk? You're not supposed to be in Johnny's face. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Everybody's wearing a mask. For goodness sake, I can't even hear myself because I'm wearing a shield and a mask. Sit down. But Mr. C, you can't. I shouldn't. I know you want to sit with your buddy and color this thing and cut this thing out. I know you want to do it with people. I know. Just like I want to sit with you in a group and I want to read with you. And I want to do math reteaching with you and 4 other people sitting close in proximity on the carpet. but I can't because it's not the responsible or the safe thing to do right now. But it's Christmas. I know it's everything you're telling me. I acknowledge it all. Can't do it. I'm not going to do it. I've gone 4 months without doing it. I'm not doing it because it's Christmas celebrations. No, not happening. So I've taken control of my life. I've taken control of my classroom. I'm open to suggestions, but I'm not open for the chirping from the sideline. You can chirp. I'm not going to stop you. But it's not going to get in my head the way you think it should get in my head. Not happening. Not like this. So this is episode 15, season 4 of the Decoded podcast. I know it took me 25 minutes to say it, but it's okay because you and I, Chris, we do this because it brings us something. And hopefully,
Joy.
Does it bring us hope?
Nope, just joy.
Okay, just joy.
Just joy.
We're in, I'm going to call it the Christmas break. You can call it what you want to call it, but we're in the Christmas break. I tell you, bro, when I got home yesterday from work, well, it was kind of a fast night. My son had hockey, so I had to leave work pretty quick to get to hockey. But when I got home and I sat down, it was glorious. I literally sat down and I was like, it's here. The break is here. Christmas is coming. What a wonderful time to re-energize, to reconnect with me, to reconnect with people around me that I so badly want to connect with and talk to. I had a beverage, a cold beverage. I actually spent some time talking to you and Tina Zeta because you have this wicked group around creativity, and last night was one of the meeting nights, and so got to spend a little bit of time with you and Tina talking about the creative process. And then this morning I woke up and felt like I just felt at peace, and I'm looking back on the last, I'm going to call it 4 months. The last 4 months and the huge accomplishment of being able to get through them, because there are many days that you hear from me in the morning where I tell you I have to sign off now because I have to go into work. And it's the hardest part of my day is getting out of the car and walking into the building. It just is. But once I'm in the building and things are rolling, it's fine. And the mask, my dislike for wearing a mask is at an all-time high. All-time high. And I need to work on that because I can't do my job without the mask. And people at work know. They'll come into my room and I look at them like, stay at the door because I don't want to wear my mask. And this is my space. If I come into your space, I will put my mask on, but I don't expect you to put yours on in your space when I'm really far away from you. I don't. If you don't like it, if you don't want to. So I don't have to wear a mask now for the next 2 weeks unless I go somewhere, and that's fine. I make that choice to go somewhere and to put my mask on, but I don't have to wear a mask every day if I don't want to. So there's a lot of breaks here. There's a lot of things that I'm just looking forward to. I was really looking forward to talking to you this morning, just to podcast, and it's a big moment for me. It's a monumental moment. A lot of people didn't think we'd get this far, but we're here, and now the government's playing around with, well, maybe we'll go remote in January, whatever. Somebody said to me, we're not going to be ready. And I said, whatever. I'll do my attendance that Monday morning and we'll figure it out from there. My kids, my students, I was like, you should all be proud of yourselves. We're all leaving safe. We made it. We're doing what we need to do to stay safe. Yeah, it's been tough.
I had a surreal moment. No, not surreal. It was absolutely real. It wasn't surreal. It was absolutely real, where my brain, I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember what it felt like to not wear a mask in school. It just occurred to me. It so that kind of goes along with me forgetting that I'm wearing a mask. Like I just kind of walk out of the school, I walk to my car, and I have a moment of what I actually noticed was that I could feel I had my jacket unzipped, and so my neck was exposed, and I was feeling the cool air just like shooting around my neck and sort of down my into my chest and my t-shirt. And I had a moment of like where I just realized I was only feeling it in that one space. And then it occurred to me the reason that I didn't feel the same thing on my face was that half of it was covered. So I was wearing my toque, my glasses, my mask, which sort of goes right up underneath it. So I was basically, ready for the ski hill almost. And that just kind of led me to trying to conjure the memory of what it felt like to not for that not to be normal. And I couldn't. The memory's missing. I can't I can't draw up. Well, maybe it's because at the time I wasn't making memories. It was just normal. I wasn't really locking anything in. There wasn't anything necessarily emotional or poignant about not wearing a mask. So, I didn't have a sense of appreciating that feeling on my face, but definitely I walked out of the school and could feel cold air in spaces that just normally I wouldn't because of my jacket. And that led me to think like, crap, like I'm still wearing my mask. Um, it reminded me, it's a moment. You ever seen a tree that's, here's the random, a tree that's been leaning against a fence or sort of like grown up right beside a fence? And you can see how the actual trunk has kind of like grown around the actual like it's usually like wire fences, like the wire just it doesn't, I wouldn't even say it embeds, the tree has grown around the actual wire of the fence.
It like becomes one
It's one.
with,
You're,
yeah.
yeah, you're not even gonna, like you would actually have to damage the tree. Like even if you cut the wires to disconnect the tree from the fence or the post or whatever it's kind of grown around. Now I'm literally quite saying not like grown around like it's wrapped around it, but the pressure from the fence or that wire from the fence against the bark has damaged it, and then the tree healed around it and then just kept on growing. So there's actually like that wire is embedded inside of the tree's system. And we're seeing some of these pictures posted up, some of the frontline workers, the doctors, the nurses, the researchers that have, the rashes and the abrasions on their faces from wearing their masks for too long. It's just the image that comes to mind. The difference with the tree is that it knows that it's been damaged in some way, but it's kept on growing. So it's some of these experiences that we're having are still like, it's still a splinter. It's a splinter in our sort of psyche. It's a splinter in our wellness. But we're growing around it in interesting ways. I don't have anywhere to go with that metaphor, but that was the kind of moment that played out in my head as I realized I had accepted and forgotten that I was wearing a mask. And that kind of freaked me out a little bit. It also, sorry, one more thing. And also, just another point to this is that I could recall at that moment driving around and seeing a single person in a car. So this is where I'm kind of playing back the game tape. And I've had conversations with actually Karen, with my spouse, where we're out for a drive. Neither one of us are wearing a mask when we're in the car together, right? It's our bubble. We drive past a single person in their car and they're wearing a mask. And I'd say to her, like, why the hell are they wearing a mask? They're all by themselves. But now when I'm thinking, and so like, this is like months ago, we've noticed this. Like, what if other people forgot a lot sooner? They accepted and forgot a lot sooner. Like they didn't even realize that they were still wearing their mask. Didn't even realize it. That could have been what was playing out there, not some sort of strange mask aficionado. They just like wearing masks, but they actually had because there was no real reason. If you're alone in your car, that's about the best. That's the best bubble extender ever. Like, just be in your car, nobody else around, and they were wearing their mask inside. Maybe they had forgotten. It's kind of messed up. I don't want to forget. I don't ever want to forget that I'm wearing a mask again. I don't ever want to forget that. I don't want it to become natural to wear it. I want to have a reaction to it.
I'm in the same boat as you. 100%. The minute I get to my car, that thing is off. Like, and I see some of my colleagues, they get in their car, they start their car and they drive away. Maybe like I don't like what happens underneath there. I don't like, like I know when my beard is too long because my mask doesn't fit well anymore. And it's really getting on my nerves that I have to do something with my beard to wear this mask. Like, it really bothers me. So, like, for example, the last couple of days, I'm like, oh, my beard needs to be trimmed again because I can feel the mask isn't fitting right. My ears are hurting from the string.
Mm-hmm.
I know right away.
The beard bulge.
And it pisses me off because I could easily wear other masks that will accommodate my beard, but I wear the masks that are given to me at work, and they don't work well with how I want to live my life. And it seriously pisses me off. And then I get caught up in that. So I have to let that go, or when it's the little things. It's little things like there are lots of stairs at my school. Well, you've been in my building, so you know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So getting up to my classroom, the quickest way takes about 30 stairs. And once you do those 30 stairs, you're huffing and puffing. And then all that is happening inside this mask. And even the kids are like dying. And I'm like, it's okay, think about something else. So even the strategies I give them, I'm using myself. But
Mm-hmm.
I get up there and it's like all hot and sweaty under there. And I'm like, this is disgusting. I have to just continue to wear it until either I'm by myself or whatever the case is, It bothers me. And I'm doing my best to get past it. But at the same time, I don't want to be that tree. I've become that tree, become one with the fence in too many ways because of this pandemic. And I don't want it to just be my whole life is me intertwined with this fence. I just don't. I can't. I need to feel something that belonged to me before all this. And it's hard because I'm conflicted. It's still a privilege to do my job and to work with these kids. But,
Mm-hmm.
and even some of them, like, they take their mask off. I'm like, what are you doing? Oh, sorry. That's like the 10th time I told you. If it was okay, I'd be doing it too. It doesn't help that I've got this big nose either, right? Because the mask the whole thing's messed up. If I could just wear a mask that worked for my face, it would take away so much focus that I put on the mask and the emotions that come with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't. So I hear what you're saying. And I don't talk like this with everybody at work because some of them just don't want to hear it. And that's okay. They don't have to hear it from me. But I can tell you. And Shref can listen to it. Carlos can listen to it.
Ramona, maybe Ramona.
Maybe Ramona. She's probably cooking up a bunch of turkeys.
She's cooking up a storm. Something.
Just messing with you, Ramona. Thanks for listening to the Decoded podcast.
What do you want to do next? Remember, we do this because of joy. And Tim too, right? Tim from what's his? Some
Teachers on Fire.
Teachers on Fire. We're a little bit on fire.
Let's keep going. Let's keep going with the fire. I want to talk about my dad.
Okay, do it. Drop in.
So I was telling you this week. So for any of our listeners or people watching us on YouTube, because we're podtubers now.
Podtubers.
Did you see Shref's tweet?
Yeah.
We just said something. We need to write it down, or else Shref's gonna take it. I love that he jumped on that. I love it.
Yeah. So was it that he tried to drop that hashtag first? Is that what it was?
He was just messing with us because I said if we don't do something
Oh,
with
if
it
we
right
don't, that's
now,
right. Yeah,
Shrek in the future is
we
going to
nailed it.
take it and do something
We
with it,
nailed it.
right?
We
We
should do
nailed
that
it.
more often. More. I think that was also the Brad to the future. That was ours too, I think.
Oh yeah, I call him Shrek to the future, but it's actually Brad to the future.
Is it Brad?
I
Yeah, I
think
think
it's
it's
both.
Brad. Yeah, we
That's
we
the
we we nailed both of those.
that's the beautiful thing. It's like I'm wearing what's his name's glove,
Thanos.
Thanos,
Yeah.
because I get to decide when this
Mhm.
podcast gets pushed out for audio pleasure, and Shref only listens to the audio, so we can. This is awesome. We're a step ahead of you, Shref. Unless he gets in the DeLorean and does some magic, right?
True.
Okay,
Let's go back to Dad.
let's go back to Dad. So this week, you and I have been exchanging communications, and you got me thinking about my dad. I don't remember how it started or whatever, but back and forth about my dad. And I was telling you yesterday that it's really kind of cool to think about my father in a way that doesn't get me all choked up, because it allows me. It's like I don't need to get all sad every time I talk about my dad not being here. And that's a huge shift for me, because when you remember someone who's gone, it can impact you in a certain way. And it's been my dad left in 2001. So it's been 20 years since he's been gone. And I was telling you what I told you was sometimes I forget to think about my dad.
Hmm.
And that part bothers me, right? That part bothers me. But also, I feel like it's just weird. It's a weird feeling. I don't know how to explain it. Sometimes I remember my dad, and I don't like the way that plays. So I was telling you that I'd like to be more intentional um, in communicating with my dad. What does that look like? I'm not sure yet. I think that talking to you and the podcast helps. Um, I also I'm getting to a space where I can think about my dad, and I can kind of have him have him sitting beside me like this fine elf holding Twix, and I can have my dad there with me, and just not be in an emotional state, to be in a rational state. There's room for emotion, there's room for rationale, right? There's room for all of that, but it's gotten to the point where I'm starting to think about, hey, what would my dad do here? What would my dad have said to me? What can I say to my dad? Because there was a turning point there before my dad passed away. My dad opened up a door to me that was pretty friggin' cool, where it wasn't just my dad imparting knowledge and information to me. He was letting me do it to him, because I think
Hmm.
he had realized something. So before so when I was a child growing up, it was I think it's safe to say, and I think anybody like my brother, my sister, my mom would agree, that my father's focus for his kids were to become well-educated, successful people. That was his dream, I guess, if you boil it down to just one thing for his kids. He wanted them educated. He wanted them successful. And I think that when I got to the point, and this is really awesome that it happened, because it was about a month before my dad died. About a month or two before my dad died, I had finished my master's degree. I had formally finished all my courses, and I had applied to graduate, and it was permitted. So it was like it was a done deal. I was done. And I had just gotten my first real job. You know, I was working in a school, I was a guidance counselor, I was making real money all of a sudden. Like, I'll never forget my first paycheck of real money. It was like, holy cow. And I remember I was sitting outside on the front stoop of my house, and my dad was sitting beside me. And my dad kind of looked at me like, well, like, you did it. We did it. Because I know he enjoyed every bit of success that I had. And I know that with every failure, he also felt it like I did. So we're sitting there and he says to me, I can't just let you make all this money. You're going to have to help out, or you're going to have to give me a cut of it. And I remember at the time I was like, what are you talking about? This is my money. Now, at the moment, it was interesting to hear my dad say to me, you're going to have to give me a percentage of your pay every 2 weeks. He wasn't doing it he was doing it in a way to make sure that I wasn't going to throw it all away, which I guess my dad didn't know that part of me. I was never going to throw it all away. I was more responsible, more mature with my money than he would ever know. But I think he was like, okay, you've made it. Now let's not let you throw it away. But in that moment, sitting on the stoop talking, it was, I started talking and my dad was actually listening to me. He was like in a way that I've never really experienced before. It was like all of a sudden, and I give credit to my dad for this, all of a sudden, it was like he was like, you did everything I asked of you. And now it's time for me to do what you ask of me. And I didn't get it. I get it more now because I can see it. Because when hindsight's 2020, I look back and the way my father was talking to me and listening to me in those 2 months before he died, it was a real gift because I was waking up at the same time as him, getting dressed up, coming down to the kitchen. I'd be eating cereal, he'd be drinking coffee, smoking a cigarette, right? And he'd be like, "What's going on today?" And I'm like, "Well, you know, we've got these kind of interviews happening, or it's a light day, so I'm probably going to end up seeing like half a dozen adults talk to me about their career path and checking in on their academics." And like it was like adult to adult. And now that I look back on it, it's almost like he took a step back and he let me be an adult with him, which I had never done before. And there's a lot of power and control issues with my father and I. So a lot of my negative characteristics come from learning to deal with my dad, but they don't work very well in a family. They don't work well with a wife and with 2 kids. But that's part of my growth. That's part of my learning. But I felt like my dad took a step back and he opened up to me. And he kind of was like, you listened to me and I taught you everything I could teach you. Now it's time for me to open up and listen to you. Teach me about the world and how it works, because you are now what he thought was a successful adult. You're educated. You have a job that pays you like what a successful person should be. And it's only now that I'm starting to understand that gift. So even though he didn't get to live to see me get married, have kids, he lived long enough to let me teach him a few things, which was really cool because he didn't have that perspective. And I hope one day that I can do that with my kids. And I'm not actually waiting. I'm kind of doing it now. So like, I smile because my 10-year-old did it to me yesterday in the car after hockey. He said, "Dad, how are you feeling?" I said, "I'm good." And I was on cloud nine, right? Like, just finished up work, cloud nine. And he goes, well, when I was on the ice, you were looking at me kind of funny here and there. I said, oh, it didn't mean anything. He's like, I know those looks. Are you upset about something? I said, I'm not upset about anything. And then he did to me what I had to wait 21, 22, 23 years to do to my dad. And he said, when you make those faces, you tend to do this and this. And you're probably going to get upset with me, but I'm going to tell you something that might upset you. And I'm like, go ahead and say what you want to say. And he said something. I don't know what it was. To him, it was a big deal. But the fact that I was listening to him and I was honoring what he was saying without stepping on him, which I can easily do as his father. You know, my dad, I didn't do that with my dad till I was like 22, 23 years old. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about with you based on our conversations this week, is that he left way too soon, but I guess he left at the right time because I got to experience that with him. And then, kind of pissed me off that then all of a sudden my paycheck was going towards the household. It wasn't my money because my dad was gone. So my mom and I were working, and that leads me to one more thing I want to say, and then you can have the mic. But this business of retirement, it kind of scares me because my father never retired and my mom will never retire. So to me, this idea, this concept of you work for a certain number of years, you pay into a system that will pay you back at a point where you're eligible to leave a job, it frightens me because I've never seen it before. Retirement to me is not, it's kind of a scary thought because I wonder whether I will make it there. I just don't understand it because that's not the world I come from. My parents, the work my dad was doing, the work my mom's doing, there is no retirement. They've never paid into anything. There is no retirement. So for me to have what I have within the teaching world is like, it's golden, but I don't understand it. It frightens me. So when you talk about your dad retiring, I connect death to retirement. So in my little brain, I'm like, geez, man, maybe if your dad didn't retire, he'd still be alive. But I know it makes no sense because obviously.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. Totally makes sense. I've had many conversations with myself, with my sister, talking about when your purpose is not internalized and you're entirely dependent, you might have not even realize it, on having externalized purposes. When your job is taking up a lot of that space, I often thought about how when my dad retired, what the job took with it. And part of that was, I think, a sense of purpose. And it's not like you can't blame the job. You don't blame the job or the systems of the job. But it does make me think about how much we give to our work. Of course, there's the paid labor, and that's important that you understand that you do a job. There's expectations for the job. And there's criteria that you have to fulfill in order to get paid. I think the other things that happen with the job, the things that you give though, are like your dedication, your focus, your appreciation, your emotional, psychological labor as well. And I always thought to myself that on one hand, my dad seemed to and had said that he enjoyed working for the bank, that it did feel purposeful to him. But I also thought because of the amount of space that it took up, it ate into his purpose of being a father. And when, and in doing so, it took up space between he and I. I'll only say that from my perspective. I don't know what that felt like or looked like with my sister and my mom. And I think that when part of his soul, when it was no longer fed by the actual job, which was like the on-demand type of purpose, that he kind of struggled to find purpose back with the family again. I think that there was the stuff that maybe he figured had just been put on hold and that he could start cashing in on or exploring. It's that idea, like, I think it's that idea of retirement, that concept, like you're going to have time to do the things that you want to do. And he did. He started to explore writing. He started to explore some other things when he did retire. But I always wondered, and I've wondered about this for myself and for others, about, how does that, when you're no longer purposed by the work, what sort of like physical and psychological toll does that take on you? And I did, in that sort of metric, I did start to do like really, really vague calculations around, had he kept working, would he have lived longer? So I have made that similar connection to you, as in retirement equals death. And I've wondered for myself, what would it mean? What will it mean for me? What will the impact be when I no longer have access to my teacher life? And I think part of that reflective practice has also led me to start to recalibrate, kind of pivot, if you will, and start building friendships and communities that are not dependent on me punching in and punching out each day. And I think in some ways I feel like I'm loading myself up with the good stuff that I might be able to avoid the possibility of, well, I guess on one hand, I guess death when I retire, but it's not that kind of specific, but just to make sure that I have things that really drive. I don't want to wait to discover my purpose when I finish work. That's what it comes down to. I want to start having a full understanding of my purpose, which kind of backs off the teacher side. It includes teaching in my purpose. It doesn't center my purpose in teaching. So in that perspective shift, you've witnessed some of it. My family has witnessed some of it. Not everybody kind of understands what it is. I think it's the simple. I think that hyper simplified T-shirt for this is the midlife crisis. I think the more complex dynamic that's happening, though, is a reckoning where you really do somehow, some way, for me, gather enough little life experiences that you start to just be able to tap into some clarity. And for anybody that's going through the process of kind of like figuring themselves out, as they approach 50, I'm really enjoying the process. It doesn't frighten me. It doesn't scare me. It doesn't sort of make me think like, I don't lean too far into the midlife as in, well, I'm halfway there. I am kind of embracing some of the joy, I guess you will, of the ambiguity of I'm starting something cool now. But when you do say the retirement equals death, that is something that flows through my operating system because of what I observed in my own father's process when he left the bank.
I don't know about you, but some of that retirement equals death type thinking also comes from, having had two parents that were old school. So, for example, my parents would never talk about
Mm.
death because they thought if
Yeah,
they
beckoning
did, they
it.
were inviting it. And it was almost like, so I would indulge them, right, until my dad passed away. And then I said to my mom, it was almost like the equivalent of grabbing my mom and shaking her awake, like, hey, snap out of this. The fact that dad, there were those moments in the grieving, there were moments of clarity for me. So that's why I kind of don't want to go back and wish I didn't grieve. And I didn't grieve as much as I should have, but there were moments of clarity. And I remember one of them was, geez, like these thoughts, they just break me, man. I remember sitting at the bank. My mom and I went to the bank because they had home insurance. So when my dad died, we could go to the bank and say to them, okay, he's passed away, and I believe his death meets all the requirements for you to now like suspend the mortgage. We don't have to pay it anymore because he's gone. We had insurance. But there's always a scam, right? There's always a scam. So I'm sitting there and we're waiting to talk to somebody at the bank about my father's passing and the insurance on the mortgage. And the really immature side of me is thinking we are so screwed because they're going to come up with a reason why his death doesn't meet the requirements. Like, because you
Mhm.
know how they have, like, if it's suicide or if it's this or if it's that, you're void, right?
Yep.
And we didn't, as far as I could tell, we didn't meet any of those requirements. So I was like, okay. So we're sitting there at the bank. And again, I'm thinking, how is this going to work? Like, banks are machines. They don't just make decisions on their own. So lo and behold, a lady who works at the bank is a mother of a kid that my brother played hockey with and went to school with. So she comes in, she's like, hey guys. And she's like talking to us like, how's your brother? And I'm like, good, good. And she's like, how can I help you today? I was like, oh, my dad passed away recently. And she's just looking at me like, are you friggin' serious? I'm like, yeah. And we're here to talk about the mortgage insurance. And it was just this, like, my mom, I'm looking at my mom and she's just like half of the person she used to be because she's dealing with her partner being gone. And I'm dumb as you know what. And I don't even know how to navigate this whole thing. And I just remember after that meeting, I said to my mom, like, okay, if it's just me, you, and my brother, and my sister now, and remember, I just got my first real job. So I'm like, now I'm the breadwinner in the house all of a sudden. And I'm like, I need to know what's going on. Like, you need to be like straight up with everything, finances, all the stuff that I could ignore because I was your son cannot be ignored anymore because now I'm basically like keeping us afloat. Ultimately, that's what it's going to be. And she refused, and I was like, you don't get that anymore. Like that, with dad being gone, this old school BS cultural stuff is like gone. And I remember saying to her, I'm like, okay, the next step after we deal with all this nonsense that is now on my plate is we have to get you a will. She's like, I'm not getting a will. If I get a will, I'm going to die. I'm
Mm.
like, you could die without the will, and then your three kids are screwed. I said, that's not cool, mom. That's not cool. And it was tough at the time because I could tell she was still hurt. We were all still hurting. It was so fresh. It was like my dad wasn't even gone a week, I don't think. And we were at the bank having these chats. And I was like, no, 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 we need to get to the lawyer. And we had to go to a lawyer because here's the other cool thing about my dad. When he came to this country, back in those days, they probably still do it now. They're looking at your documents. They might not be able to read it all properly. So they start creating their new documents. And if they spell your name wrong, you don't talk back. Like in the 70s, you don't say that's not how you spell my name. You don't respond to these people, these government people, these border people. They do what they want because they have the power and you have nothing. You're just lucky they're letting you into the country. So my dad had 3 or 4 aliases.
Yep.
And I remember, I know it's funny. It's funny, but it's not funny because
I get it. I
the
get it.
funny part is the immigrant ethnic experience. The not funny part is growing up watching cop shows and stuff and being like, my dad has aliases. Is he like a criminal? Like, these things run through your mind, right? So we had to go see a lawyer about this. And fortunately, my mom, for some reason, still the lawyer that had helped us buy the house, and they were in some kind of, we got into a car accident and there was some civil suit or something. This guy did that too. So my mom was like, we're going to go to Joe Blow. And ethnic people, they like, this guy hadn't seen my mom in 15 years, but he was like, my mom's like,
He was the guy. He was the guy.
I trust him,
Yeah.
So we go sit down with this guy and we tell him, yeah, my dad passed away and he was really sorry and he was really good. And I'm like, they tell us he's got 3 or 4 aliases, so they won't let us change ownership of this or that, because we need legal papers to say that this guy with these 3 names was really this one guy. And he's like, no biggie. He's literally, as I'm talking, he's pulling out the papers, he's putting them into the machine. Like, for him, it's like, I do 10 of these a day. For me, it's like, is the RCMP going to come knocking on my door? Like, is there something? He's like, it's all good, Roland. This happens to people like your dad who come from another country, who, when he came, there's no talking back. There's, you smile and you say, yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. So every time they butchered his name on his driver's license, on the mortgage paper, like, it was ridiculous. The official papers he had that were not who spelled properly. He's like, it's no biggie. I know your parents. I helped you guys get your house. I helped you with a lawsuit. Like, I've been with your family long enough to be able to speak to this. So he just writes up some legal paper and signs it, saying that this man, who also is known as, and then he lists the names, is truly this, he's the father of this boy and he's the husband of this lady. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's the affidavit.
Right. And so then I'm walking into places with this thing, like, they're looking at me like, do you have? And I'm like, it's right here. They're like, okay, good. But yeah, I remember shaking my mom, saying to the lawyer, my mom's going to get a will. And he's like, right on, because he's like, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And my mom's like, no, I'm not. I'm like, yes, you are. So I said, how do we have to do? What do we do? Do I get you an appointment? And he's like, yeah, we can do that. My mom's like, I'm not doing this. I'm like, you're doing it. Because if you drop dead tomorrow, me and my brother and my sister are screwed. And I said, Mom, I can't do this again. When I know full well you can do something to help yourself, I can't do this again. Because I was hearing things about my parents' lives that I never knew, that now all of a sudden I was responsible for. I was like, this is not cool. This is not cool. So anyway, my mom got her will done. She's still alive, knock on wood. And it's been, 20 years that she's had a will and she's still living. So, I mean, I told her, when your time comes, your time comes. But we need to be secure. We need to have some security here, because this is real deal stuff. This isn't old school Lebanon. People die every day. This is Canada. It's a machine. You don't play by their rules, you lose. So we play by the rules. So anyways, just stuff like that. Like, so for me, even though I know that, it's still retirement equals death. I'm going to retire like a year or 2 after my dad's age of death, and it scares the bejesus out of me. Am I even going to get it? I have no idea. So it's part of the reason why I'm kind of living life a little bit more fun these days. And, I'm trying to do everything I can to get my kids in a good place for when I'm not here to help them or whatever. But it's weird, because I have this great, if I can retire, I have great things to look forward to. I'm paying into my pension all this whole time. So I've been doing what I need to do to take care of myself. And it'd be a shame if it didn't happen, but it's weird. It's so weird. I can retire earlier than my dad's death, but I worry that I might not even see it.
I feel like we shifted just a little bit off the joy. We let the joystick go. Just a little bit, we let the joystick go.
I'm going to write down in my notes, death and joy.
Death and joy.
And the other thing too, I need to say this, then Mike's back to you. This business of my notes suck. So we talk, and then I write up the little write-up for the blog post, and I'm like, I don't even know if this makes sense anymore. But that's how we roll here at Decoded Podcast.
That is true.
We once had someone who was willing to sponsor us if I would clean up my act, and I said I refuse, and there went the sponsorship. I made that up. It just sounds good. You gonna drop any more wisdom, or are we done?
That's good. That'll do.
That'll do. Hey, Shref, Merry Christmas. If I can push this episode out before the end of this weekend, are those the ones and the zeros? I didn't get the kiss. What's with the pucker up business? You're making me uncomfortable here, Clough.
You'll have to. I dropped the binary code into the chat.
Oh, I see that now.
Feel free to copy and paste it into a text, a binary to text translator. You'll appreciate it.
Are you just messing around, or does it actually mean something?
Do you even know? Did you know that I did the same thing for the graphic for Decoded?
Does it actually mean something?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Spoiler. You didn't know that? Easter egg. No. Yeah.
It's too long. How are we going to put it into a binary? What's the name of the tool I need to use to see my code? Just
Google up binary to text.
Binary to text. This is crazy, man. I didn't know you did that.
Yeah. So this isn't it. This isn't the text from that, but it's
okay, convert. I'm doing. Oh, that is awesome.
So if anybody chooses to, we won't reveal, but if feel free, you'll have to write it out longhand. But
that is awesome, man.
Do you appreciate that?
Big time now. So yeah, pucker up, baby.
So
thanks for that. Thanks for a good episode.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, man.
I'm gonna break the rules of today's society. I'm gonna wish you a Merry Christmas.
That's all good. I can do the same. Wish you a Merry Christmas, season's greetings, happy holidays, seasonal salutations.
I mean, you're Catholic by paper, right? There's paperwork that says you're Catholic.
There is. There's a paper trail.
Okay, yeah, Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Not by practice, but I appreciate it. And I appreciate you for mentioning that. Thank you.
You're welcome. He's a Catholic, everybody, on paper. So yeah. Use it against him or use it for him. Do whatever you want with it. Yeah. Okay, so that's it. So the next time we talk, it won't be the new year yet. It'll be
No.
Hopefully next Saturday.
Yep. Yeah, aiming for it.
Boxing Day, if we're not shut down, because I want to go out and spend all my money.
Yeah.
I want to wear my Mandalorian. That's what I want, eh? I want to get a Mandalorian mask, so I don't have to wear a face mask. I just put on the helmet and go.
Then you need to connect with Eugene Chun, because he made one. He made the whole outfit. When the Mandalorian came out. So Eugene, I worked with at a former school. I think I've connected you with him. He's a coder. He's making these leather man purses now, which are awesome. echun.com, I think, is his handle in different spaces. But he also made himself the Mandalorian helmet, and he was wearing it during our strike action last year. So that was about when the Mandalorian first came out. He made one out of, I don't even know what the material's called, but it's sort of like that foam, some sort of foam.
Beskar steel, buddy. Come on.
Well, okay, yeah, the real stuff, Beskar steel, but he made it. He made the costume himself. He's made one.
I have to tell you, Chris. I know we're trying to go, but I have to tell you, there's a kid in my class, and I call him Mando because he's got this metal water bottle, and when it falls and it hits the ground,
does it sound like that?
It's horrible. It is like the most metalish sound. So the one day it fell, and my rule is when it hits the deck, you don't touch it. If you're messing around with it and you drop it, you've aggravated the room enough. Just leave it alone. So it falls, and I do one of these, and it's silence in the room. The kids are looking at me, and they're like, "Oh, he's gonna lose it." And I do one of these, and I look up and I go, "Where did you get the bottle, Mando?" And he's like, "Mando." I said, "That thing sounds like Beskar steel hitting the floor." And I go into this whole thing, and then I'm like, "Pick it up." He picks it up, and I'm like, And the kids are like, Mandalorian? You watched that? And now we're off on a tangent. I
Of
said,
course.
the steel that they use in the Mandalorian is like indestructible. And that water bottle hitting the ground that just made a sound that is like,
That's awesome.
and then the kids are like, is he going to toss it out the window? Because I've got this thing where you've seen my classroom,
Yeah.
2 flights up. So I always say to kids, I have a feeling that object is going to go flying out that window in a minute. And they just laugh at me, right? It's part of the fun. Anyway,
Because your
long
school
story.
is like, it's like old school. Like you
Yeah.
actually have windows that could open.
Yeah. Anyway, so I call him Mando. And so it fell yesterday. And everybody in the room was like Mando, and they're shaking their head. So I had to throw that in there. But you watched The Mandalorian, right?
I just watched. Yeah, I do. I watched
But you're way
the
behind.
No. I did. Season finale. Finished it this morning when I got up.
Oh, dude, that was awesome, eh?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I saw a lot of the posts on socials, so I didn't know. Kudos to socials, or at least my social feed. No one was dropping the spoiler. No one was sort of talking about the actual ending, but it was kind of cool because I've had. So here's my question. Here's my question that I've never been able to. I haven't done any research on it. Is at some point I wondered, where is this positioned in the larger story of Star Wars? So I've always kind of wondered that, like, as far as time and date, where was this stuff kind of happening? And I didn't read any of the books, so I can only base it on the movies. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, my people didn't spoil it either, so that was pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm.
So, Clough, I'm going to talk to you about 1,000 times before Christmas, but Merry Christmas. And
Yep. Thank you, sir.
Merry Christmas to our listeners. We had 3 people listening solid for a long time. So thanks to our listeners and Shref. I'm going to wish you a Merry Christmas, even though it's not Christmas yet. And I know you're going to hear this before Christmas because I'm going to publish this before Monday. That's the goal for Shref.
May the force be with Shref.
Now we're going to go Star Wars with Shref, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, may the force be with you, Shref. Lord Shref. Jedi Shref, Master Jedi Shref. I don't know what to call him.
I don't know.
Let's think about that. We'll hit him up next weekend with that
Okay.
one. Okay, have a great day.
Take care, man. Chat you soon.
Peace.